Hi, and welcome to Anonymous Animators review. Today we're reviewing the new Dragon Ball Z movie that had just come out, but I guess whenever you're watching and listening to this, it's whenever. But it's the Resurrection of F, or Resurrection F, I'm not exactly sure. It's one of those awkward Japanese titles, right? So I'm Wesley Boone.
I'm Emily Strasser.
And let's get into it. So, yeah, we've just come out of the theatre. We watched it at about, this afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
And my first opinions of it is I enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed Dragon Ball Z. Like, it's Dragon Ball Z. Like, you're not gonna be surprised. Nothing new's happening. It's martial arts, and people like hitting each other with overpowered power levels, and everybody's like powering up, and it's very, very much the same as the Frieza saga. Like, it's the resurrection of Frieza, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, we're not. We should stay away from spoilers now because the English version has just come out, and so for the most part, I think. You think we should have a spoiler version of this afterwards? I think let's keep this one spoiler free. So this is just opinions, and then we'll have a spoiler episode after this.
Okay.
So yeah, just to sort of recap. In my opinion, this is sort of what I took from the film. Look, there's nothing fancy about it, like in any way. It's Goku and Vegeta fight Frieza, and they beat the tar out of each other, and that's pretty much it.
It's what you expect from a Dragon Ball Z anything, right? It's like that. There was a reason I watched Dragon Ball was to watch these overly buff fighters beat up other overly buff villains. Like I was telling Wesley about how it reminded me of when I was 12 and I used to me and my brothers used to watch Dragon Ball Z together because it used to be on in the afternoons after school, and man, there's some good times, man. And I just remember everyone in school was just so into Dragon Ball Z, and I remember Rurouni Kenshin was also on at that time. We used back home in the States, we have this thing called Toonami, and that was how we used to view our shows.
Yeah. We had sort of a little bit of that, of Toonami coming in. It was on the late night.
Oh, really?
On our Cartoon Network channel. I remember it being on, and it was just this sort of very. We had it just at the tail end of it because then it stopped, right? And I believe it came back.
It did,
in the
actually.
States, but not with us. And then we got an anime channel.
Nice.
So just on our satellite TV, we got this anime channel. But all great TV stations, it fell apart. It started off anime. It was a whole bunch of new anime we hadn't seen and so that we had, but it was great because it was just this constant flux of anime.
Yeah.
And then it started playing repeats as if they just didn't buy any more anime. And it's not like they didn't have advertisements on there or anything. There was, it was a full channel, so I'm assuming they're making their money. So I guess the idea was oh, look how much money we made. I guess we don't need to buy any more anime. And then they just started replaying the same anime over again, so people stopped watching. And then they started playing Japanese game shows and reality TV stuff. And people stopped paying attention, and eventually the channel went away.
Well, as fun as Japanese game shows are, it's one of those things that it's amusing for maybe the first few episodes, and then it becomes the same thing over and over.
Takeshi's Castle is funny enough as it is, and I never had any problem with it, but it's when they started playing Kenny versus Spenny. I was this is not even Japanese.
What?
It was what is this? This is stupid. And I just don't even like Kenny versus Spenny. But, back to Dragon Ball Z. It's a pretty fun movie. It's, again, there's not really much to say about it except that it's it's one thing I did love, oh my goodness, was the martial arts choreography.
Yeah.
It was... Dragon Ball Z's always been about the martial arts. There's always the power-up and the drama and everything, but pretty much, I think the foundation is the power-up, because that's what you want. The reason why people watch, a lot of Kung Fu films, right, is because, that's why they got popular, it wasn't about the story. The story's always been shit. It's you want to watch the Kung Fu. And Dragon Ball Z is pretty much that, too. It's that, it comes from that culture of we're watching, now the thing is what makes it different, because it's an animated show, right, is that you can go beyond just the standard kung fu moves.
Yeah.
You can have these crazy out of, these impossible attacks, and then of course with the Saiyans and the really high powered humans flying around and beating the tar out of each other, being really, really, well, not out of each other but out of the enemies. And so that's what this is. But the thing is, whereas Dragon Ball Z, the cartoon, even, and I mean, I think Dragon Ball was actually a lot better animated than Dragon Ball Z, I think, if I remember correctly. I haven't seen Dragon Ball in a long time, but no, maybe I'm lying.
I was gonna say, I remember Dragon Ball Z being
The better
like,
animated?
yeah.
Because the reason why I say that is just, I don't know, it's like, I watched an episode recently and I was like, oh wow, this animation's actually smooth, but maybe I'm talking, I don't know. Okay, don't worry about that, but my point at the moment is, like, in Dragon Ball Z, let's stick to that, where there's fights, and every now and then, sure, there might have been like Goku does like a whole kick rotation, but the thing is, like, that's like one scene for the 20-minute episode.
Yeah.
The rest is just him sort of like yeah. It's like, like Chun-Li kicks or like punches in the same way, or like there's a scene where, like, when he's like attacking Cell, and then it's just like they're like throwing punches at each other, but then there's like a frame. And then, like, one frame of Cell dodging, and then a frame here and a frame here. And it's like, I guess the implication is, like, he's moving so fast that he's moving slow, I guess, or whatever. And I get it. It's like, he doesn't have to worry, and that's the smoothness. But, I mean, that was also obviously the limitations of the animation budget. In this movie, they obviously had a way bigger budget.
Yeah.
And you can see it, like, just in the scene where Krillin, Tien, Piccolo, Gohan, and then that weird alien dude who's from Dragon Ball as well. He, like, they're all, and then they all have their distinct styles, like Tien's a lot more like Shaolin, like fighting, and then I mean, I guess Krillin was also Shaolin, but like they definitely had their own unique fighting styles, and it was like, and it was just awesome to see. Like, it wasn't just like, oh, punch and the guy flies away and then they move to the next guy and punch him. It was literally like block, grab, grapple, throw, and I loved that. I was just like, all that, it just comes back to the choreography of the fighting, and I really, really loved that from this movie.
Yeah.
I mean, even in Battle of the Gods, there was a lot of that. This was the previous Dragon Ball movie, which we've never reviewed because, I mean, I watched it before we started this, and it's not like we can't rewatch it, but, yeah. So, that's pretty much what I loved out of this.
Yeah. No, that's a great thing. That's very good. I guess I'm definitely not as much into the lore of Dragon Ball as much as some people are, because I remember being into it, but I wasn't, like, super obsessed with it or anything. It was just a fun show that my brothers and I would watch in the afternoon. I got really into Rurouni Kenshin. I think that was the thing that happened, was I super got into Rurouni Kenshin. And Dragon Ball Z just kind of, like, got pushed back in terms of the things I was obsessing over at the time. But that doesn't mean that I don't enjoy Dragon Ball. I love Dragon Ball's. I love Dragon Ball Z a lot. I've been meaning to rewatch Dragon Ball just because I didn't really. Unfortunately, when Dragon Ball was on, I wasn't as into the afternoon anime that used to play on Toonami. Mm-hmm. I remember watching a few episodes, but I wasn't as into the sagas and stuff that were happening.
Like, I watched Dragon Ball after I watched Dragon Ball Z because I just didn't have access to it at the time, and it was like Dragon Ball Z came on our TV, and I had watched Dragon Ball Z before. It came on that TV. It was like one of those weird things. Like, we had a friend who had it, and we were watching through because his brother got them, and it was like one of those weird channels, we watched a lot of, like, the anime we were watching a lot it was Robotech, which was actually the anime Macross, but cut up and then told a different story.
Oh, weird.
Yeah, like, so they took from what I recall, like, I have never double checked this, but from what I recall, what happened was so they took the Macross anime and they just cut it up and then they redubbed it, and it's a whole different story, but it's the same animation from the Macross anime.
That is so weird.
Yeah, so it's one of those.
Oh, I just remembered something. The only thing I remember about Dragon Ball, like, when it first premiered on the air, I was, like, super young. I was, like, in the 5th grade or something, I think. At least I think, because that's how the timeline matches up in my brain, but I could be wrong. Do you remember an episode of Dragon Ball where, like, Goku he's, like, drunk or high or something? And the only thing I remember, I swear this was Dragon Ball, but I don't remember for the life of me which episode this was. I wish I could remember. I think he was, like, he was just completely zonked out for some reason, and I just remember, like, this weird music was playing in the background, and, like, there's all these little, like, critters following him. Does that ring a bell?
No, not at all.
I've been trying to find this episode for years because I'm like, I swear this exists somewhere.
Yeah, there's a scene or a sequence I remember seeing as well that I never really asked people, but I've never seen it again. I don't know if I think it's Goku, but it could have been Yamcha, but I think it was Goku because I mean those two have very similar designs, right?
Yeah.
And I mean Yamcha's got that scar, but I don't remember this guy having the scar at the time, but they're in this baseball team, and the baseball team, like, they're winning, and then you say Goku's in the team, and then the baseball team starts fighting, and then Goku gets excited and he starts fighting with the baseball team.
Wow.
Like, and I remember distinctly seeing that, but I've never seen it again.
Yeah.
You know, like it feels like this. So maybe it was like one of those things where there was like extra scenes and like it was put here and there. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And
I mean, there is a lot of Dragon Ball cut out as well from the original, and even Dragon Ball Z. There's like a lot of stuff that's missing from the original. When you watch the air script.
Really?
Yeah, like
well, I'm not surprised.
Yeah, like and there's a scene where like Krillin like flips the bird. I believe it Frieza or somebody. I can't remember who, but he flips the bird at them, and so that's Vegeta. Vegeta pulls the middle finger at I think Krillin. And then I think there's a scene where Krillin lowers his pants and like moons like a bad guy.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's obviously all cut out. And then of course the gore is also cut out, like the scene where Trunks cuts up Frieza. It's a lot more bloody.
Yeah.
And
Well, that's not uncommon, especially in North America. I think we've talked.
Well, I mean, it was 4 kids right there, like who bought it over.
And then there's just the ridiculousness.
Or it's the 4 kids syndrome. I don't think 4 kids bought over Dragon Ball Z.
I don't. Maybe
they had Yu-Gi-Oh. I know that, but
yeah, okay, they did have Yu-Gi-Oh. But I do know that was not terribly uncommon. But I do remember like. The thing that used to drive me crazy, though, speaking of 4 kids, the thing that always drove me crazy was the whole thing with the jelly donuts. I think we've discussed this before, where it's like the rice balls, but they always call them jelly donuts. And it drives me crazy because, like, you know, if you maybe had, like, an aside, it's like, oh, by the way, in Japan, they've got this thing called a rice ball, and it's a good treat, and you should try it out, kids. And I'm like, that would be amazing, right?
Or it's a hot dog, like the sushi they're eating is a hot dog. And
and it's like, what?
Yeah,
what?
yeah.
Why can't you just explain to children that, no, there are cultures that are
But I think
not...
that there's a mentality of adults who, I mean, still to this day, like not even just back then, like people think that children don't understand stuff.
Well, if you just explained it to them...
Yeah, because they're still human beings and they can learn because that's what we're about. Like, we're a learning species.
Well, I mean, yeah, I loved culture as a kid. I remember in the first grade we used to, here in the, ancient Japanese culture, and here's like the kimono and the little wooden sandals that they wore. And I was like, oh, this is really cool. I hope to one day visit Japan, kind of thing. I'm in the first grade. I'm not even anywhere near my weeaboo stage, and I'm like, ooh, wow, Japan's cool.
Well, I mean, learning about different cultures has always been fascinating. I mean, I remember in my junior years we were learning a lot about ancient Egypt and I was like, wow, that's amazing. I want to be I don't know, can you say Egyptologist? But basically I wanted to be an archaeologist in Egypt.
Yeah.
And that was like a thing that just interested me at the time. I mean, I obviously lost interest in that field. But I did get into the mythologies of Egypt and then Greek and Rome and all that stuff. But
anyway,
coming back to that wayward thing. So other little things I really enjoyed in the film was, well, okay, this sort of bugged me. I really wish Android 18 played a bit more of a role. Not from a like a feminist standpoint. Like for this, I've always known Dragon Ball Z's always just been a man's club of just buff dudes with their shirts getting ripped apart and showing each other their muscles. That's fine, that's heteronormative in some sort of weird scope. But it's like rugby. Everybody just piles on top of each other and grabs each other's butts. But hey, that's manly. But it's like. She's more powerful than Krillin, like literally.
And she explicitly states
she's more powerful than Krillin. She's more powerful than Tien. At this point, probably on par to Piccolo. Piccolo's on par to her. She's powerful. She's crazy strong, even as a human. I guess she retained her skills and all that. And it's like, no, you stay here, look after the kid.
Yeah.
It's like, and I get it. Like, you don't want to leave the kid behind. That is true. But then Krillin, you stay. But Krillin is then, of course, a staple of the show. And not as much as Android 18 or 18 as I guess she's known now. but I think they could have worked something out. Like maybe they could have left Marin at somebody's house or whatever.
Yeah.
That being said, I fucking love the inclusion of Master Roshi.
Yeah.
You know, like, I'm glad they
Yeah.
brought him back, and I'm glad he took a part in it, because that was something I'm hoping to see in these future movies and the future upcoming episodes of, what's the new series called? The new Dragon Ball.
Fudge if I remember.
Well, and whatever it's called, because we'll review that once we've watched all the episodes, right? But because I mean, we've only seen the first episode, and there must be more by this point. But like, I want to see more human interaction and more human success. I get that, like, Goku is the powerful one, Vegeta's the powerful one. They're the ones who are going to be solving the problems. They're the main characters, and that's fine with me. But I want, and that's what I liked about this movie. Like, Tien, Krillin, Master Roshi, they all contributed towards the battle.
Is it Dragon Ball Super? Is the
Maybe,
name of
I
the
think
show?
it is. It sounds about right.
Okay.
It's the new Dragon Ball Z or Dragon Ball show. It's basically because they wanna like remove the bad taste that is Dragon Ball GT.
Yeah.
Oh, that's not canon at all.
Yeah,
like
that's
it's been
just the
completely
entire
scrubbed.
series is just nope. That was a fever dream.
Yeah, pretty much. So but I mean they keep some of the things like Gohan and Vidal's daughter Pan, like she's, you saw the baby version of her chilling there. And then it makes me wonder, because I remember in GT, like, Pan does sort of power up, because she's still got Saiyan blood in her and she's, like, powerful. Or, but I mean, she doesn't really, but she's apparently, I mean, again, this was a long time ago, so I'm talking from, like, whatever memory. But I remember her, like, powering up and almost reaching Super Saiyan. So she was going to be, like, the first Super Saiyan female.
Oh,
And it just never happened. Like, she just didn't get there or whatever.
Aww.
And so, like, that's what I'm hoping maybe to see, as well as, like, some sort of something. I want to see more. That's what I want to see more in the future of Dragon Ball Z Super or Dragon Ball Super is more female fighters, because not from a feminist standpoint, but this is literally from like I just want to see girls fighting and, like, boobies flapping around. That's like me, okay? Like, it's not just, like, I mean, sure, from another standpoint, it's also just refreshing because girls can fight. And, like, one of the things I loved in kung fu films too is, I mean, and again, when I say booby slapping, and I'm just kidding. I don't want to see, because that's not what I want to see in anime.
I can see the look in your eye, but our
Yeah. I just realized, like, on a talk show, it's like, wait, is he serious? No. Like, I just want to see, because I mean, female fighting is different from male fighting. Like, they do have different forms and stuff. Like, that's just what I mean. They share forms, and then there are forms that females are better at than men are better at.
Right. Yeah.
And I like to see that variation, because already, as I said, we saw Tien and Tien use a different fighting style from Piccolo. It was distinctive, but it like they had different fighting styles, and even though they all trained under the same people, because I believe Tien and Krillin are Shaolin monks, if I remember correctly, and I mean, Piccolo, I don't know where his fighting style comes from, but they're all based on things, and it's like, the muscles go, and the motions of the kung fu was definitely there. And so that's just that. I'm gonna gush over that, like, all the time. If they keep doing it that way, I'll be like, wow, that's amazing. But if you, so to rewind again, I was just a bit sort of annoyed at Android 18's exclusion for like no reason, like literally no reason. You can go put the girl at Marin can go to a creche, or whatever. I think she would have at least contributed to helping fight the big group of bad guys that they had to fight, because they had to fight a whole bunch of minions, which was just a lot of fun.
Yeah. Oh man. And can I say something about that too? Is like, I thought that was really cool, the way that they integrated some of the CG characters, like, in the background and some of the more complicated scenes, and then also it was not seamless. I could tell, like, which ones were 3D models and which ones were the 2D animated version. But I thought that was just a really intelligent way that they did that, in the sense of, like, they only used the 3D models when it was, like, a bunch, because there's, like, a bunch of these, Frieza has his army, so they've just got all of these individual characters. And instead of having to animate them all individually, or just have, like, a single frame floating up and down, they had these, like, really subtle movements. But they're in the background, so it's like, I could tell because I saw it on a big screen, but if I think I saw it on a smaller screen, it would have taken me longer to figure out, oh, those are 3D models, that's really cool. And also with some of the fighting scenes where they have all of these camera rotations, and there's really fast movements, so it just made more sense to do the 3D models to have all these really complicated camera rotations. And
And well,
then
they're also really fast sequences, right? So it's not like you're going to be able to really see it.
yeah, but I thought I appreciated that. That to me is like, that's how you integrate CG and 2D.
Yeah, like the CG that they've used definitely, I mean, it borderlines on that 2D. It's like that vector style, right? That's
Well,
become
it's like
quite
if you've
popular.
ever seen the Dragon Ball, like, what was the Dragon Ball video game that you were playing over at Steve's house?
Oh, Xenoverse?
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of like that style where it's like that weird. It's like a 3D model, but they use the really thick
Well, it's
outlines.
vectors, or what's it? I want to say vector sprites, or vector... Shit, it's something, I can't remember the name of it now. But yeah, there's a particular name for it, because it's pretty much what Wind Waker, the Zelda Wind Waker game uses.
Yeah, yeah. It's like it's 3D, but it tries to pass for 2D.
Yeah, it just flattens the image. What's it called? I just can't remember. But yeah, so that's that, and then what else? Oh, I mean, look, there were a lot of like sequences where the animation like sort of cheaped out. But that just means they, like, you could see where they put a lot of the money.
Yeah.
Of the, so like a lot of money went into making the fight sequences look beautiful and seamless and everything. And a lot of money went into making like the 3D, that you pointed out. But then there's like little sequences, like just throwaway scenes. Like I remember right in the beginning, there's this overhead shot of those little bunnies playing like their drums and everything.
Oh yeah.
And it just looked like somebody took like a frame of, just like one, like they drew one thing and then they just rotated it and moved it. That's what they did. They put it on a peg like on the scene and
yeah.
it wasn't even like squashed and squashed or skewed or whatever. It was just this like rotation of this one 2D flat drawing that didn't even animate.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, I like, and I saw that, I was like, okay, and it was like really early. You don't actually expect that sort of like in early on in animation. You do sort of expect that type of thing like in throwaway scenes, in which it was. So I don't know exactly how to rectify it, but yeah, it was. I noticed that, and then there was like scenes with like Frieza's tail that sort of like skipped, frames or whatever. And so there were shortcuts taken. It's not surprising because I don't think that this was not like a $60 million budget movie.
Yeah, this was certainly no Ghibli film. That's for sure.
Yeah, but it definitely, there was a lot of money put into it, and I definitely think they must have made their money back from Japan easy.
Well, it's Dragon Ball Z, right? I mean, I'm surprised the franchise has lasted this long, because...
Well, I mean, yes and no, right? Because, I mean, if it wasn't being paid attention to, I could sort of understand that sentiment, but it's not like they've let it die. Like, the Z universe in particular, GT sort of just got thrown by the wayside, which I don't even think that was made in Japan. I believe that was made in the States.
Really?
Yeah.
That would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, not exact information, but I believe it was bought, like the rights were bought over stateside, and then it was at least produced in the States.
I couldn't even get into it. It was like I watched a few episodes and I'm like, I have no idea what's going on and I just don't care.
Yeah. And so yeah, well, back to budget, like it was just like a lot of the money, I think, got used in the right places. And so yeah, that's pretty much my gushing of it. It always comes down to just the fighting sequences. I mean, the story is so simple. There's not much to the story. Though the other thing I wasn't like, I don't know, I suppose I should save this grievance for the spoiler episode. But they like sort of the way the story was told is pretty much how every Dragon Ball Z or Dragon Ball Z movie is told. Mm-hmm. It's like it's a little bit different in like a way, like where, I mean, it almost felt like there was no real threat in this movie, and the same thing with Battle of the Gods, like it almost felt like it was like so
nonchalant.
Yeah, like it didn't matter.
Yeah. At
the end, it was like, okay, well, we just had this little quick sort of story cap adventure in between, whereas at least things like The Revenge of Cooler and I think in Revenge of Cooler or The Return of Cooler, there was one, because I know there's two Cooler movies, but there was one where the Cooler comes back as like a robot, like or android half mix thing, and he also has like a whole bunch of copies of himself made. It was like something called the Getty Star or something. I can't remember. There's like 20 movies, and he straps the two Saiyans, Goku and Vegeta, into like this energy harnessing thing, and then they overpower him, and that's how they destroy him.
Right.
But they are like the cooler beats them like so easy and effortlessly, and it's like that's sort of
Well, that's what I've noticed about these franchise movies, because, when we do a franchise movie in the States, it's like the company just pulls all of its resources together and it's just like, yeah, we're gonna make a SpongeBob movie. But then, I've noticed, there's, a ton of these Sergeant Frog, you know me, I love Keragunso, Sergeant Frog, right? And there's a bunch of these little, one-off movies. I'd love to look up some of them and just watch them with you, because some of them are super cute. But they're not really,
they don't contribute to the storyline.
Yeah, they're just kind of these sort of one-off things.
That's the difference between Battle of the Gods and this Resurrection of F. They do contribute to the story, I believe. Again, we haven't watched Dragon Ball Z or Dragon Ball Super all the way through, because it's not finished yet, and we've only seen the first episode anyway.
Yeah.
But it's like the other Dragon Ball Z movies, they didn't contribute. Like, when the movie comes out, is Goku Super Saiyan at this point? We're not sure. In the series he is, but this came out after that, and he had, they're back on Earth after the Frieza. They talk about it sometimes in the movie. They're like, oh, we just killed Frieza. And then they go and do their things, and then it's like, Goku just turned Super Saiyan, you can win. And he doesn't do it because he hasn't learned how to Super Saiyan yet.
Oh, weird.
It's like this weird, and that happens a couple times in the movies, they don't use the powers that they've learned in the show, or vice versa. Like in the show, they won't learn the powers that they've learned in the movie. And that bugs me. Because, I like things being sort of canonical.
Yeah.
But just other than that, again, so it's both, I guess, a positive and a negative. I would say that the story isn't really much craziness to it.
Well, it's basically the fun action flick that you and your Dragon Ball Z fans.
Yeah, if you're going into it expecting a not Dragon Ball Z film, you're going to be disappointed. If you're going in expecting Dragon Ball Z fighting sequences, then you're going to get what you paid for.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's the kind of movie you watch it together with friends during a late night. You get a bunch of snacks together and yeah, Dragon Ball Z fighting, woo!
Yeah, for sure. I don't see myself watching it again though. Not anytime soon. Maybe in a couple of years, but once right now is more than enough.
Right. Yeah.
It's I don't know. The tension that there was in the TV series, that wasn't there in this movie. Is he gonna make it? And I get that a lot from also find out next time in Dragon Ball Z. But it would have been, even the tension against, when before Goku arrives on the scene, you knew he was coming.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, okay, well, we're just gotta wait for Goku to do his saves the universe thing. And
that's not to say that the fighting sequences that happened before Goku shows up weren't awesome.
No, the fighting is amazing. I'm talking about from a story perspective.
Oh, okay.
There was no tension, there was no worry, there was no... Yeah, that was pretty much just the only downside. But again, it's that's not what I expect out of a Dragon Ball Z sequence, really.
Yeah.
It's... The powering up sequences were there, and Goku's cockiness was there, and Vegeta's arrogance was there, and yeah. I was expecting... One thing I was expecting was another fusion of Goku and Vegeta.
Yeah.
But I don't think they're gonna do the Gogeta and the Vegito stuff ever again. Because, they can't do the Vegito stuff again, because Vegeta destroyed the earrings. I don't think those earrings exist anymore. Potera earrings. And I don't think Gogeta will happen again, because Vegeta refuses to do it.
Yeah, well... As it was established in the film, there being a couple of silly babies.
Right, so I don't know. That's pretty much my opinion of Dragon Ball Z. We're relatively spoiler-free. We didn't give out anything.
No, nothing very important anyway. I'd like to end on a joke, though.
Sure.
All right. How many Super Saiyans does it take to change a light bulb?
How many?
Only one, but it takes 4 episodes and Krillin dies.
Ba-da-da-ba-da-ba.
Bop.
All right, so there you got your sane humor for the day. We're gonna do the spoiler episode next,
Yep.
and but you know, contact information: theanonymousanimators@gmail.com if you want to send me anything, and yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything you want to plug? I mean, we don't really anything else need to plug. You can find our information at the bottom of the YouTube about link, and I believe it'll be in the iTunes thing. Yes, we're on iTunes, we're on YouTube, we're on RSS feeds.
We're everywhere.
We're watching you. Okay, but thanks for listening, and catch you next time.
Later.